Hey, it's Dr. Jensen. Just wanted to do a quick video clarifying some things on the Symbolic Assailant assignments, both part 1 and part 2. So sometimes this assignment feels a little daunting because it's kind of unique in how we write and think about crime. So essentially, the way you want to approach Symbolic Assailant part 1 is you want to think about your potential offender that would come after you. Now, one suggestion is it's easier to think about it in terms of a personal confrontation. So the assailant might be attempting a crime of robbery or assault or something personal and violent. It's a little harder to do this with maybe theft or burglary, but it can be done. So you get to choose the offense and you get to choose the victimization that your assailant would come after you on. And sometimes that varies student to student because of their lifestyle, the kind of role they have, or their own vulnerabilities. So again, this draws from criminologist Jerome Skolnick, who talks about, essentially the kind of person we envision that's coming after us. So the way you want to approach part 1 is make sure you read through the instructions. So right in here, consider your own subjective image about who will victimize you and the nature of that victimization. So in your first paragraph, you're really kind of telling a story. And then second, what are the characteristics of the person you fear will victimize you and the kind of victimization that they will perpetrate against you? So you want to be descriptive into what the offense would be. And again, it's okay to be subjective. This has to do with your own fears and concerns and really describing your symbolic assailant in detail. So sometimes I will prompt students to give additional descriptions that provide information on physical traits, demographic characteristics. Are they male or female? What their race is? Are they tall or short? Able-bodied? Large build? What's their background or upbringing? Their temperament or personality? Is it someone you know, or is it a stranger? So those are things that might help give you some ideas on what to write about. And again, you want to discuss this, how your description matches what you see, hear, and read about in crime and media. And then the really key part here is use and apply at least 3 course concepts from Module 1 and include those in-text citations and applications of the material. So you can talk about things like experienced versus symbolic reality, about social constructionism, the role of news. You can also talk about some concepts that have come up such as gatekeepers or beat systems, maybe using some of those frames or narratives that have come up in the Surrett text. You can talk about the influence of infotainment or mediated experience, and this is all from chapter 1 in the Surrett text. So newsworthiness is a good one to talk about, or even the marketing of different news models, the market model, the manipulative model, or the organizational model. So these are just, a few things to look at. Again, make sure you include those in-text citations. Your very last page of your paper will have a bibliography of citations, and yes, you can use outside sources if you choose. It's not required, but you do need to cite the sources from class you're using. Now, I do have an advisory note. You are not required to disclose personal information about your experiences that you wish to remain private. It's very common for students to bring up a past victimization that is very telling and very traumatizing. And you are absolutely not required to do that. You can maintain your privacy, but sometimes people are drawing from that experience. And again, that kind of ties into some of what we're talking about as far as how we see reality. We take in multiple sources, our own lived experience and experience that comes from the media with things that we have less information on. Now, also, as an alternative, if you were previously a victim of crime and you're concerned about anxiety or trauma that might be uncovered during the preparation of this assignment, please get in touch with me in advance. You don't have to give me any detail, and I will provide an alternative assignment for you so that you can still complete the assignment for credit and not have to go through that. So I used to have a criterion here where in order to complete the second paper, I wanted you to implement critiques and edits from the first paper. But over the years that I've taught this class, it was a little awkward for me to edit and critique your own experience because it's kind of hard to grade that, because it's kind of like grading your opinion and grading your life story, and I can't assign a grade to that. It was a little strange and abstract to think about. But what I was looking for was making sure you were applying those concepts that we're learning about in class, and that's really where a lot of the grade comes from. So make sure you write the 2 full pages with 1-inch margins, following the guidelines here. And again, that last page is going to be a separate page for bibliography. Another thing that comes up from time to time is sometimes this paper becomes a landing place for some deeper pain. And sometimes writing about lived experience can be very useful, and the paper is useful beyond its intention. Writing can help, and I express my empathy for those of you that have had victimization or any disclosures you're going to make, and I hope that healing is in place for you, because sometimes it takes a really long time to sort through a lot of those difficult experiences and emotions. So essentially that's kind of the first part, but let's jump into the second part, which is where maybe some more questions have come up. So I'm going to bring up the Symbolic Assailant Part 2 assignment here. And essentially you're going to take Part 1, again drawing from Jerome Skolnick, and you're going to use what you wrote about in Part 1 and compare it with information about crime and correlates in this PDF that goes into different kinds of crime and what we actually know about them. So this is more of the research-based reality on how prevalent crimes are, the nature and extent of those crimes, and what they actually look like. So essentially, you're going to take research data on crime, compare it to your own experience and your own ideas that you wrote about previously, and then discuss how similar or different your assessment or perception is compared with the objective reality coming from that research data, and crime correlates. And the PDF is also linked here. And also, you're going to implement something that Surratt talks about, which is called the backwards law, presented on pages 205 to 207, right, where we kind of use that imagery to move forward policy implications on how to address it, even though it might not be accurate. And it's okay for your own Part 1 to be highly inaccurate and maybe drawing from media presented imagery rather than experience, or maybe your portrayal actually is rather accurate compared to the research on assault and robbery and those kind of things. So essentially, look at kind of your own image, your own experience, and see how well, it could be similar, it could be different, it matches to research data on those types of offenses and what we know about those offenses. Now, you can certainly draw from other sources if you'd like to, about traits of offenders, characteristics of offenders, and again, how prevalent those kinds of crimes are and what those offenders tend to look like that commit those crimes. So you're not limited to just the resources in class. You can certainly draw from other sources. Just make sure you include a bibliography of those outside sources with your paper, using those same formatting guidelines from Part 1. So you're going to be writing another 2 pages, and you're going to kind of continue on the document you started with Part 1. So the first 2 pages are Part 1 again, and then you're going to add 2 pages, that's Part 2, where you're doing that analysis, looking at the similarities and differences of your assessment of an assailant compared to the reality and the data on it. Okay, so you're going to attach those 2 together and submit it with just 1 page of bibliography in the back, so you may have to combine all the sources for both parts together on that final page. And then essentially, you're going to submit it for credit. And again, the rubrics are attached as far as the scoring goes. This second part is a 2-page paper. It's double-spaced, and all the formatting guidelines are included in here. And again, if you have further questions on how to go about the analysis or kind of the approach or the strategy, you're welcome to message me or meet with me in office hours, and we can maybe come up with some ideas together. So I hope this helps as far as you looking at both of these papers and really kind of doing a deep dive into your own imagination, as well as looking at the science and the research on the matter. So we'll see you in the next module.